Picture a world that looks nothing like the Earth you know. 400 million years ago, our planet's continents stretched endlessly in shades of brown and grey, barren rock baking under an alien sky. No trees cast shadows across the landscape, no grass carpeted the ground, no flowers painted meadows in brilliant colours. The land lay naked and hostile, a place where only the hardiest bacterial films could survive, clinging to rocks in thin, colourful streaks. This was Earth before the Green Revolution, a revolution so profound it transformed not just the surface of our planet, but the very composition of the air we breathe. Here's what's really happening in this ancient world. Life exists only in the oceans, where it has thrived for over 3 billion years. But the land remains an alien frontier, a harsh environment that poses challenges no organism has yet solved. The universe has a surprise for us, though. In the shallow coastal waters, something extraordinary begins to stir. Tiny green organisms, no bigger than the algae you might see coating a pond, start to experiment with something revolutionary. They're learning to venture onto land. These pioneers face an almost impossible challenge. Water supports their bodies and delivers nutrients directly to every cell. On land, they must hold themselves upright against gravity's relentless pull while somehow finding water and nutrients in an environment that offers neither readily. It's like asking a jellyfish to climb a mountain. But evolution has spent millions of years preparing for this moment. These early plants carry within their cells the solution to one of the most important engineering problems in Earth's history: how to build a structure strong enough to stand upright, flexible enough to bend without breaking, and efficient enough to transport water and nutrients from the ground to every growing tip. The secret lies in a remarkable molecule they're about to invent. We call it lignin. And it will change everything. Here's what lignin actually is. Imagine building a house where instead of using separate boards nailed together, you could grow the walls from the inside out, creating a structure that's simultaneously the building's frame, insulation, and plumbing system. That's essentially what lignin allows plants to do. This complex polymer weaves through plant cell walls like reinforcing steel through concrete, creating the first biological material strong enough to support structures taller than any life form that had existed before. When these early plants first begin incorporating lignin into their tissues, they're not trying to become trees. They're simply solving the immediate problem of standing upright in a world without water's support. But here's where the story becomes truly remarkable. This simple innovation triggers a cascade of changes that will reshape the entire planet. The first woody plants stand barely taller than your thumb, but they possess something unprecedented: the ability to keep growing upward, year after year, building upon their own structure. Unlike animals that reach a certain size and stop growing, these plants discover how to add new layers of wood around their existing framework, growing larger and taller throughout their entire lives. Within just a few million years, a blink of an eye, in geological terms, competition for sunlight drives these early trees to extraordinary heights. If you could walk through one of these ancient forests, you would find yourself surrounded by giants that dwarf the trees we know today. Some reach heights of over 300 feet, creating Earth's first skyscrapers and casting shadows across landscapes that had known only blazing sunlight for billions of years. But the transformation goes far beyond just the visual. These towering plants are performing a chemical miracle that will make complex life possible. Inside every leaf, in structures so small you'd need a powerful microscope to see them, an ancient process unfolds that connects your every breath to these primordial forests. Here's what's actually happening inside those leaves. Using energy from sunlight, they're taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and combining it with water from the soil to create sugar, releasing oxygen as what we might call a waste product. But this waste is about to become the most important gas in Earth's atmosphere. As millions of these early trees spread across the continents, They begin pumping oxygen into the air at unprecedented rates. The atmosphere's oxygen content soars from less than 1% to levels that eventually reach 35%, nearly twice what we breathe today. This oxygen-rich air will later enable insects to grow to enormous sizes, with dragonflies sporting wingspans of over 2 feet and millipedes stretching longer than a human arm. The effects ripple through every system on the planet. For the first time in Earth's history, the land begins to influence global climate as dramatically as the oceans do. These vast forests create their own weather patterns, releasing enormous quantities of water vapor that form clouds and trigger rainfall far from any ocean. They begin to moderate temperatures, creating the stable climate conditions that will eventually allow complex land animals to evolve. Perhaps most remarkably, these early forests invent the first complex ecosystems on land. In their shadows, other organisms find new niches to exploit. Fungi develop intricate partnerships with plant roots, trading minerals from the soil for sugars from the trees. Insects evolve to feed on plant tissues and pollen. Spiders spin webs to catch the insects. The first complex food webs begin to emerge, creating the foundation for all terrestrial life that follows. The chemistry involved in this transformation operates at scales both massive and microscopic. Each tree functions like a living chemical factory, running thousands of reactions. Simultaneously, water travels from the roots to the highest leaves through a transport system more efficient than any human engineering has achieved. Nutrients circulate through vast networks of living tissue. Waste products are recycled into new growth with an efficiency that puts our best recycling systems to shame. But here's perhaps the most mind-bending aspect of this ancient green revolution. The wood these trees create will persist for hundreds of millions of years. In some parts of the world, these early forests grow so rapidly and die in such massive quantities that they pile up faster than decay can break them down. Buried under layers of sediment, compressed by the weight of geological time, they transform into something that will later power human civilization. Coal. Every time you flip a light switch or drive a car, you're using energy that was captured from ancient sunlight by these primordial forests. The carbon they pulled from the atmosphere 400 million years ago is still feeding our modern world, though ironically, burning it now returns that ancient carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, creating the climate challenges we face today. The timescales involved challenge our human understanding of permanence and change. These early trees live for centuries, some for over 1,000 years. They witness the movement of continents, the rise and fall of mountain ranges, the advance and retreat of ice ages. From their perspective, human civilization unfolds in mere moments, yet they laid the chemical and atmospheric foundation that makes our existence possible. The diversity that emerges from these early experiments in wood formation astounds even modern scientists. Evolution discovers dozens of different ways to construct woody tissue, each adapted to specific environmental challenges. Some trees develop wood so dense it sinks in water. Others create wood so light it floats like cork. Some grow straight as arrows toward the sky, while others spread their branches in elaborate canopies that capture every available photon of sunlight. As these ancient forests mature, they begin to exhibit behaviors that won't be fully understood by science until the 21st century. They develop sophisticated communication networks, sharing resources and information through underground fungal partnerships. They coordinate their responses to threats, releasing chemical signals that travel through the air to warn neighboring trees of insect attacks. They even appear to nurture their offspring, directing nutrients to young saplings struggling to survive in the forest understory. The mechanical engineering involved in tree construction continues to inspire modern architects and engineers. A tree must solve challenges that would perplex any human designer. How to build a structure that can flex in hurricane-force winds without breaking and support its own enormous weight while growing taller every year, and transport materials efficiently from ground level to heights that would challenge a modern crane. The solution lies in wood's remarkable structure. At the microscopic level, wood consists of long, hollow cells arranged in precise patterns that maximize strength while minimizing weight. These cells are reinforced with lignin in exactly the right places to handle the specific stresses each part of the tree experiences. The result is a material that, pound for pound, is stronger than steel in tension and more resilient than the best human composites. But perhaps the most profound legacy of this ancient green awakening lies not in the trees themselves, but in what they made possible. By pumping oxygen into the atmosphere and removing carbon dioxide, these early forests created the atmospheric conditions that would eventually allow large, complex animals to evolve. Without their patient work over millions of years, there would be no forests for future explorers to discover, no canopies for scientists to study, no wood, wide web for researchers to map. We exist in a world where every forest, from the smallest grove to the vast Amazon rainforest, carries the genetic memory of these ancient pioneers. The lignin in every tree trunk, the photosynthesis occurring in every leaf, the transport of water from roots to canopy, all of these processes trace their origins back to those first brave organisms that learned to stand upright on the barren continents of the distant past. When you walk through a forest today and breathe the fresh, oxygen-rich air, you're experiencing the culmination of the longest-running experiment in planetary engineering that life has ever attempted. The trees around you are the descendants of organisms that transformed a lifeless landscape into the green world that sustains all complex life on Earth. The story of how green life awakened on our planet reminds us that even the most fundamental aspects of our world, the air we breathe, the climate we inhabit, the very possibility of complex life on land, emerged from countless small innovations, accumulating over vast spans of time. In those first tiny plants learning to make wood, in those early forests reaching toward the sky, we see the beginning of the most remarkable transformation in Earth's history, the moment when life learned to engineer entire planets, and this is just the beginning. Beneath the soil of these ancient forests, connections are forming that will prove even more revolutionary than the invention of wood itself. For most of human history, we looked at forests and saw individual trees, millions of separate organisms competing for space, light, and nutrients in a botanical version of survival of the fittest. We couldn't have been more wrong. Beneath every footstep you take in a forest lies one of the most sophisticated communication networks on Earth, a biological internet that makes our human-built web look primitive by comparison. The universe has a surprise for us. Forests aren't collections of individual trees at all. They're single, interconnected superorganisms where information, nutrients, and chemical signals flow constantly through underground networks more complex than the neural pathways in your brain. This revelation remained hidden until 1997, when a young Canadian forest ecologist named Suzanne Simard decided to test an idea that went against everything her professors had taught her. Using radioactive carbon tracers, she set out to prove something that seemed impossible, that trees could share resources with each other through underground connections. Here's what Simard actually did. She injected different species of seedlings with radioactive carbon isotopes, each with a unique signature, then used radiation detectors to track where those carbon atoms ended up. What she discovered revolutionized forest science and our understanding of how life operates on our planet. The carbon didn't stay in the trees where she injected it. Instead, it traveled through the soil, moving from tree to tree through a vast network of fungal threads thinner than spider silk. These fungi, called mycorrhizae, form partnerships with tree roots that date back over 400 million years to those very first forests we explored in our previous chapter. But here's where the story becomes truly extraordinary. This isn't just passive sharing. The network operates with an intelligence that seems almost conscious. Mother trees, the largest, oldest trees in the forest, actively recognize their own offspring and send them precisely the nutrients they need to survive. When a tree faces attack from insects or disease, it broadcasts chemical warnings through the network that reach other trees in under 5 minutes, allowing the entire forest community to begin defensive preparations. The scale of these underground networks defies imagination. In a single handful of forest soil, fungal threads stretch for over 8 miles. The forest can contain networks that span hundreds of square miles, connecting trees that are miles apart through underground highways invisible to the human eye. If you could somehow make these networks visible, a forest would look like a vast, three-dimensional spider web with every tree connected to dozens of others through multiple pathways. The chemistry involved operates like a sophisticated economy. Trees don't just share resources randomly. They engage in complex trade agreements mediated by their fungal partners. A tree struggling in deep shade might receive sugars from its sunbathed neighbors in exchange for minerals its deeper roots can access. During drought, trees in areas with better water access share their moisture through the network. When winter approaches, deciduous trees that are about to lose their leaves dump their remaining nutrients into the network, like making deposits in a community bank that will pay dividends when spring returns. But the network processes more than just nutrients and water. It carries an entire library of chemical information that scientists are only beginning to decode. Trees communicate through over 40 different chemical compounds, each carrying specific messages about environmental conditions, threats, and opportunities. Some chemicals warn of insect attacks, triggering nearby trees to begin producing defensive compounds. Others signal the presence of beneficial insects or announce when flowers are ready for pollination. The sophistication of this chemical communication rivals anything in the animal kingdom. When a caterpillar begins eating a tree's leaves, the tree doesn't just defend itself, it analyzes the caterpillar's saliva, identifies the specific species of insect, and broadcasts that information through the network. Other trees receive this chemical intelligence report and begin producing the exact defensive compounds most effective against that particular species of insect. Here's what's really happening in this underground world. Fungi serve as both the physical infrastructure and the intelligent intermediaries that make the network possible. These organisms exist in a kingdom entirely separate from plants and animals, and they've evolved capabilities that seem almost supernatural. A single fungal individual can stretch across thousands of acres, making them among the largest organisms on Earth. Some fungal networks are estimated to be over 2,000 years old, meaning they've been facilitating forest communication since before the Roman Empire. The fungi don't provide these services for free. In exchange for connecting trees and carrying messages, they receive a substantial payment. Up to 30% of all the sugar a tree produces through photosynthesis. This makes the fungi the forest's professional networking specialists, getting paid to maintain the connections that keep the entire community healthy and informed. The network also serves as the forest's memory system. When a tree faces a new threat, the experience gets encoded in chemical signals that flow through the network and can be stored in the fungi for years. Future generations of trees inherit access to this accumulated wisdom, learning about threats and opportunities their ancestors faced even before they encounter these challenges themselves. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery about these networks involves what happens when a tree is dying. Rather than hoarding resources for a final, desperate attempt at survival, dying trees often engage in what can only be described as acts of generosity. They dump their remaining nutrients into the network, leaving chemical legacies that will benefit the forest community long after their death. Old-growth trees, when they sense their end approaching, have been observed transferring enormous quantities of carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus to younger trees, particularly their own offspring. The implications of this discovery extend far beyond forest science. These networks demonstrate that cooperation, not just competition, serves as a fundamental organizing principle in nature. The forest operates more like a socialist community than the capitalist free-for-all we once imagined, with resources flowing from those who have abundance to those in need, and information shared freely for the benefit of all. The timing and coordination involved in these networks staggers scientists who study them. When spring arrives, the entire forest doesn't just wake up randomly. It awakens in a coordinated symphony, orchestrated through the underground network. Chemical signals flow through the soil, informing trees about soil temperature, moisture levels, and the availability of nutrients. This allows the forest to time its seasonal activities with precision that ensures maximum efficiency and survival. During times of stress, the networks become even more active. When drought threatens, trees begin sharing water through fungal connections, sometimes keeping entire forest communities alive through the generosity of trees with better access to groundwater. When fires sweep through a forest, the network often survives underground, ready to help the forest regenerate by connecting the roots of recovering trees and providing access to nutrients stored in the soil. The discovery of these networks has revolutionized forest management and conservation strategies. We now understand that protecting individual trees or even small groves isn't enough. We must preserve the integrity of the entire underground network that connects forest communities. When logging or development fragments these networks, it can take decades or even centuries for forests to re-establish the sophisticated communication systems that make them resilient and healthy. Scientists are also discovering that different tree species contribute specialized roles to the network. Some species excel at accessing deep water sources and become the network's hydraulic engineers. Others specialize in mining specific minerals from rock and soil, serving as the community's geological specialists. Still others produce chemical compounds that protect the entire network from harmful bacteria and viruses, functioning as the forest's immune system. The elegance of these systems emerges from millions of years of evolution, fine-tuning the relationships between trees, fungi, and the countless other organisms that participate in forest networks. What appears to be a simple stand of trees is actually a community of incredible complexity, where every member contributes to the health and survival of the whole. As we walk through forests today with this new understanding, every step takes on profound meaning. Beneath our feet, conversations are happening in chemical languages more complex than human speech. Resources are flowing through living pipelines more sophisticated than our internet infrastructure. Information is being processed and stored in biological systems that make our most advanced computers look primitive. The underground internet that connects every forest on Earth has been operating continuously for hundreds of millions of years, carrying the conversations that keep our planet's green communities healthy and resilient. It's a reminder that the most important connections in nature often remain invisible to us, operating in dimensions and through mechanisms we're only beginning to understand. And this underground world of communication and cooperation is just one layer of forest complexity. 200 feet above our heads, an entirely different world awaits vertical cities in the sky where most of Earth's species live lives we can barely imagine. 200 feet above the forest floor, in a realm most humans never see, exists a world so alien and diverse that scientists estimate 60% of all species on Earth live their entire lives in forest canopies. Up here, frogs never touch the ground, gardens grow in mid-air, and creatures travel highways of branches that stretch for miles through three-dimensional cities, built entirely of living architecture. Here's what's really happening in this vertical world. The forest canopy operates as a series of distinct ecosystems stacked on top of each other, each with its own climate, its own specialized inhabitants, and its own unique challenges. From the dim, humid understory, where giant leaves capture scattered photons of sunlight, to the blazing, wind-swept emergent layer where temperatures can vary by 30 degrees Celsius between morning and afternoon, each level creates a different planet within the same forest. The universe has a surprise for us in these treetop cities. Most of the life on Earth exists not on the ground where we spend our time, but suspended in the air, living in communities so complex and specialized that discovering them requires the courage and skills of modern-day astronauts. Enter the world of canopy researchers, scientists who rappel into these aerial environments with the same sense of exploration that drives space missions. Margaret Lohmann, known as Canopy Meg, pioneered techniques in the 1970s that allowed scientists to live and work in treetops for weeks at a time. Using ropes, platforms, and ingenious pulley systems, these researchers discovered that climbing into forest canopies was like traveling to another planet without leaving Earth. What they found defied every expectation. In the canopy of a single rainforest tree, researchers discovered complete ecosystems that exist entirely independent of the ground. Orchids and bromeliads create aerial gardens, their roots never touching soil, instead gathering all their nutrients from rain, dust, and organic matter that accumulates in the branches. These plants can live for decades or even centuries suspended in mid-air, creating hanging gardens more elaborate than anything humans have ever built. The physics involved in these treetop worlds challenges our understanding of how life can exist. Trees must solve an engineering problem that would stump human designers: how to pump water over 300 feet vertically against gravity's relentless pull, using no external energy source whatsoever. Here's how they actually do it: through a combination of evaporation from leaves, surface tension in microscopic tubes, and negative pressure that literally pulls water up from the roots like the world's most efficient drinking straw. A single large tree moves over 400 gallons of water from soil to sky every day, creating its own weather system as this moisture evaporates from millions of leaves. In dense forests, this process generates so much humidity that clouds form within the canopy itself, creating ecosystems that exist in perpetual mist. Some trees never experience drought because they live surrounded by the moisture their neighbors create, forming aerial rainforests that exist independent of weather patterns. The creatures that live in these vertical cities have evolved to exist in a three-dimensional world where falling means death. Monkeys navigate highways of branches with the precision of experienced pilots, leaping gaps that would terrify human acrobats. Sloths move so slowly that algae grows in their fur, providing both camouflage and supplemental nutrition. Birds build nests in locations so remote that some species weren't discovered by science until researchers learned to access the canopy. But perhaps the most extraordinary inhabitants of these aerial worlds are the creatures that never descend to the ground at all. Tank bromeliads create their own private pools, collecting rainwater in specialized leaves that form natural cisterns. These miniature aquatic ecosystems, sometimes holding several gallons of water, become home to frogs that complete their entire life cycles without ever leaving the trees. Tadpoles develop in these aerial pools, transform into adults, and spend their entire lives hopping from bromeliad to bromeliad, living in a world of permanent tree dwelling. The diversity found in forest canopies astounds even experienced biologists. A single tree in a tropical rainforest can host over 1,500 species of insects, many found nowhere else on Earth. Some trees contain more biodiversity in their canopies than entire temperate forests contain from ground to sky. Scientists estimate that millions of species remain undiscovered in canopies around the world, meaning we share our planet with countless creatures we've never encountered. The architecture of these vertical cities creates microclimates as distinct as different continents. In the understory, where only 2% of sunlight penetrates, the air remains cool and humid, creating conditions similar to a cave. Massive leaves, some over 6 feet across, capture every available photon in a constant competition for light. Plants here grow slowly but live for decades, investing everything in broad, efficient leaves that can photosynthesize in near darkness. 50 feet higher, in the middle canopy, conditions change dramatically. Here, temperatures rise and humidity drops as more sunlight filters through. This becomes the forest's apartment district, where most species make their homes. Vines as thick as tree trunks twist between branches, creating bridges that connect distant trees. Some vines grow over 600 feet long, allowing creatures to travel through the canopy for miles without ever touching the ground. At the very top, in the emergent layer, individual trees poke their crowns above the main canopy into blazing sunlight and howling winds. These giants, some over 300 feet tall, experience conditions more like mountaintops than forests. Their leaves must be small and tough to survive the intense radiation and constant wind. Many emergent trees develop specialized structures, buttressed trunks, aerial roots, or flexible branches that help them survive in this harsh aerial environment. The engineering challenges faced by trees in these vertical cities require solutions that continue to inspire human architects and engineers. How does a tree build a structure that can flex in hurricane-force winds without breaking? The answer lies in wood's remarkable ability to combine strength with flexibility. Tree trunks taper in precisely calculated proportions that distribute stress evenly, while branches develop specialized joints that allow them to bend without snapping. The communication systems we discovered in the previous chapter extend into the canopy through chemical signals carried by air currents. When one tree detects an insect attack, it releases volatile compounds that drift through the canopy, warning neighboring trees to begin producing defensive chemicals. These aerial conversations happen constantly, creating an atmosphere rich with chemical messages that we're only beginning to decode. The seasonal rhythms of canopy life follow patterns more complex than anything on the ground. While ground-level plants respond primarily to temperature and day length, canopy plants must also navigate the constantly changing light conditions created by their neighbors' growth and movement. Some canopy plants time their flowering to coincide with brief gaps in the overhead foliage, ensuring maximum visibility to pollinators during their few moments in direct sunlight. Pollination in the canopy often involves relationships of stunning specificity. Some rainforest trees bloom only at night, opening flowers that smell like rotting meat to attract the bats that serve as their exclusive pollinators. Others produce flowers that mimic female insects so precisely that male insects attempt to mate with them, inadvertently transferring pollen in the process. These evolutionary partnerships often involve only two species, one plant and one pollinator, creating relationships so specific that the extinction of either partner dooms both. The physics of light in forest canopies creates one of nature's most complex optical environments. Sunlight, filtering through multiple layers of leaves, creates a constantly shifting mosaic of light and shadow. Plants have evolved incredible sensitivity to these light patterns, with some species able to detect and respond to changes in light quality that occur when different types of leaves filter the sunlight above them. Water management in the canopy requires engineering solutions that would challenge human designers. Many canopy plants have evolved specialized structures for collecting and storing water from fog and rain. Some have leaves shaped like funnels that direct water to their roots, while others have developed water storage tissues that can hold weeks' worth of moisture. Epiphytes, plants that grow on other plants, often have specialized roots that can absorb water directly from humid air. The three-dimensional nature of canopy ecosystems creates opportunities for relationships impossible on the two-dimensional ground. Ant gardens, created when ants cultivate specific plants in tree crotches, form aerial agriculture systems where insects farm plants that provide both food and nesting sites. Some ants even fertilize their gardens with organic waste, creating sustainable farming systems that have operated for millions of years. The destruction of forest canopies represents one of the greatest losses of biodiversity on our planet. When a forest is logged, the canopy ecosystem built over decades or centuries disappears in hours. The creatures that live their entire lives in the treetops either die or face displacement to unfamiliar environments where they cannot survive. Scientists estimate that for every tree species lost, up to 30 dependent species may also vanish. But the canopy also represents hope for conservation. Because vertical space is renewable in ways that horizontal space is not, forests can support far more life per acre than any other ecosystem. Urban foresters are beginning to design vertical cities that mimic forest canopies, creating green buildings that support diverse communities of plants and animals while providing ecosystem services to human communities. As we stand on the forest floor looking up into these vertical cities, we glimpse a world of complexity that challenges our understanding of life itself. Above our heads, millions of species live lives of extraordinary beauty and adaptation in three-dimensional communities more diverse than any earthly ecosystem. These aerial worlds remind us that our planet's capacity for creating life extends not just across its surface, but upward into realms where imagination and reality merge in displays of natural architecture that surpass our greatest human achievements. And yet, as remarkable as these vertical cities are, they represent only the visible portion of forest complexity. The real magic happens at the molecular level, where chemistry transforms sunlight into life itself. Every breath you take connects you to a chemical miracle that transforms our planet every second of every day. Inside every leaf around you, 6 trillion microscopic machines called chloroplasts work with an efficiency that surpasses our most advanced solar technology, capturing photons of sunlight and weaving them into the very fabric of life. This is the story of photosynthesis, the most important chemical reaction on Earth, and the process that makes virtually all life possible. Here's what's actually happening when you breathe. The oxygen filling your lungs was created just hours or days ago, inside the leaves of nearby plants, through a process so elegant and complex that scientists are still discovering new details about how it works. A single mature oak tree produces enough oxygen every day to keep 2 people alive, while simultaneously removing 48 pounds of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere each year. The universe has a surprise for us in this chemistry. The process that powers all life on Earth operates through quantum mechanical effects that seem more like magic than science. When sunlight strikes a leaf, chlorophyll molecules don't just absorb photons randomly. They harvest light energy with an efficiency approaching 100% by using quantum coherence effects that allow energy to explore multiple pathways simultaneously before settling on the most efficient route. This quantum chemistry was discovered by Joseph Priestley in 1772, though he had no idea he was uncovering the fundamental process that sustains life on our planet. Priestley, a minister and amateur scientist, noticed that plants seemed to restore air that had been made bad by burning candles or breathing animals. His simple experiments revealed that plants produce something essential for animal life, a gas he called dephlogisticated air, that we now know as oxygen. But photosynthesis involves far more than just producing oxygen. Here's the complete chemical story. Plants take 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water, add energy from sunlight, and create 1 molecule of glucose sugar, plus 6 molecules of oxygen. Written as a chemical equation, it looks deceptively simple. But this process requires over 100 separate chemical reactions, each precisely coordinated and timed to occur in the correct sequence. The machinery that accomplishes this feat operates at the molecular level with precision that would make our best factories seem clumsy. Inside each chloroplast, structures called photosystems capture individual photons and use their energy to strip electrons from water molecules. These electrons then travel through a series of protein complexes that function like molecular assembly lines, building the chemical energy storage molecules that power all life. The scale of this chemistry staggers the imagination. A single tree contains billions of leaves, each packed with millions of chloroplasts, each containing hundreds of photosystems all working simultaneously. During peak growing season, the forests of Earth process more carbon dioxide and produce more oxygen than all human industrial processes combined. The Amazon rainforest alone produces about 6% of the world's oxygen and processes nearly 2 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually. But here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. The chemistry of forests doesn't stop with photosynthesis. When forests burn, They unleash chemical processes that operate at the opposite extreme temperatures that can exceed 1,400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt copper. These fires trigger chemical cascades that transform decades of stored plant material back into atmospheric gases in a matter of hours. Fire represents both destruction and renewal in forest chemistry. Many seeds actually require the intense heat and chemical changes of fire to germinate. Their tough seed coats designed to crack open only when exposed to temperatures that would kill most living things. The ash left behind by fires contains concentrated minerals that had been locked in wood for decades, suddenly made available to fuel new growth. The chemistry of fire creates some of the most spectacular displays in nature. When a forest burns, the cellulose and lignin that make up wood undergo rapid oxidation, releasing energy stored from years of photosynthesis in explosive bursts of heat and light. Different compounds burn at different temperatures and produce different colored flames, creating the yellow, orange, and blue tongues of fire that dance through burning forests. But even more remarkable than fire's dramatic chemistry is the forest's chemical response to burning. Within hours of a fire passing through, surviving plants begin releasing chemical signals that coordinate forest-wide recovery efforts. Root systems that survived underground start sending nutrients to sprouting shoots. Seeds that have waited years for the chemical signals triggered by fire suddenly begin germinating en masse. The chemistry of death and decay in forests reveals another layer of the intricate chemical cycles that sustain life. When a tree dies, its tissues become food for an incredible diversity of decomposer organisms, each specialized to break down specific chemical compounds. Fungi excel at decomposing lignin, the tough compound that gives wood its strength. Bacteria break down cellulose and other simpler compounds. Insects and other invertebrates physically fragment dead material, increasing its surface area and accelerating chemical decomposition. This decomposition chemistry operates like a vast recycling plant where nothing is wasted. Carbon returns to the atmosphere as carbon dioxide. Nitrogen is converted into forms that plants can absorb through their roots. Phosphorus, potassium, and dozens of other essential elements are gradually released back into the soil where they become available for new plant growth. A fallen tree can take decades to completely decompose, slowly releasing its chemical components back into the forest ecosystem. The seasonal chemistry of forests creates annual cycles of chemical activity that regulate forest life. As autumn approaches in temperate forests, trees begin breaking down the chlorophyll in their leaves, revealing the yellow and red pigments that create fall colors. These pigments aren't just beautiful, they serve important chemical functions, protecting leaves from damage as trees reclaim valuable nutrients before dropping their leaves. During winter, chemical activity in temperate forests slows dramatically, but it doesn't stop. Trees shift into a chemical state similar to hibernation, reducing their metabolic processes to the minimum needed for survival. But even in the depths of winter, root systems continue exchanging nutrients with fungal partners, and some photosynthesis continues in evergreen needles, adapted to function in cold conditions. The chemistry of forest soils creates some of the most complex chemical environments on Earth. Forest soils contain thousands of different chemical compounds, from simple salts dissolved in soil water to complex organic molecules produced by decomposing plant and animal matter. The pH of forest soils can vary dramatically over short distances, creating chemical microenvironments that support different communities of soil organisms. Soil chemistry also drives the formation of different forest types around the world. Acidic soils, common in areas with high rainfall, support forests dominated by conifers and other plants adapted to acidic conditions. Alkaline soils, often found in drier regions, support different forest communities adapted to higher pH conditions. The chemical composition of underlying bedrock slowly weathers to influence soil chemistry for thousands of years. The chemistry of plant defense creates a hidden chemical war occurring constantly in forests. When insects attack a tree, The tree responds by producing chemical compounds specifically designed to poison or repel the attackers. Some of these compounds are so sophisticated they can distinguish between different species of insects, producing more potent toxins against more dangerous threats. Trees also engage in chemical communication through their defense compounds. When one tree begins producing defensive chemicals in response to an attack, it releases volatile versions of these compounds into the air. Neighboring trees detect these chemical signals and begin producing their own defensive compounds, sometimes before they're actually attacked. This creates waves of chemical preparation that can sweep through entire forests in response to localized threats. The chemistry of forest medicines has provided humanity with treatments for countless diseases. Many of our most important medicines originated from chemical compounds produced by forest plants for their own defense or survival. Aspirin comes from compounds found in willow bark. Many cancer drugs derive from chemicals produced by rainforest plants. Scientists estimate that less than 1% of forest plants have been thoroughly analyzed for their chemical properties, suggesting that thousands of potential medicines remain undiscovered in forest ecosystems around the world. The water chemistry of forests creates some of the purest water on Earth. As rainwater filters through forest canopies and soils, it undergoes complex chemical changes that remove pollutants and add beneficial minerals. Forest streams often contain water so chemically pure it rivals the best human water treatment systems. This natural water purification represents one of the most valuable ecosystem services forests provide to human communities. Climate chemistry reveals how forests influence weather patterns through their chemical emissions. Trees release not just oxygen and water vapor, but also volatile organic compounds that serve as condensation nuclei for cloud formation. Forests literally create their own weather by providing the chemical seeds around which water droplets form in the atmosphere. Some scientists estimate that forests contribute more to cloud formation than ocean evaporation in many regions. The chemistry of forest regeneration shows how life rebuilds itself after disturbance. When a forest is damaged by storms, disease, or human activity, the chemical signals released by damaged plants trigger complex regeneration responses. Pioneer species produce chemical compounds that improve soil conditions for the species that will eventually replace them. This chemical succession guides forests through predictable stages of recovery, each stage preparing the chemical environment for the next. As we walk through forests understanding their chemistry, every breath takes on new meaning. The oxygen entering our lungs was created by quantum mechanical processes in nearby leaves. The carbon dioxide we exhale will become part of new plant growth within days or weeks. The pleasant smells of the forest represent volatile chemical messages, carrying information between plants and between plants and animals. The chemistry of forests operates as Earth's largest and most sophisticated chemical processing system, running thousands of simultaneous reactions that convert sunlight, water, and atmospheric gases into the biological molecules that sustain all life. Understanding this chemistry reveals forests not just as collections of trees, but as vast chemical engines that have been refining and perfecting the chemistry of life for hundreds of millions of years. This chemical mastery becomes even more remarkable when we consider the speed at which evolution experiments with new solutions to survival challenges. In the world's most dynamic forests, life pushes the boundaries of what chemistry can accomplish, creating forms and processes that seem to border on the impossible. In the Amazon rainforest, where temperatures remain constant year-round and rainfall exceeds 8 feet annually, evolution operates at a pace that makes other ecosystems seem frozen in time. Here, life experiments with forms so bizarre and strategies so extreme they challenge our understanding of what's possible. Pitcher plants digest insects in pools of acid strong enough to dissolve metal. Trees walk across the forest floor on stilt-like roots, literally moving toward better growing conditions over the course of decades. Orchids invest 15 years growing underground before blooming once in a spectacular display, then dying in a gamble that their single flowering will ensure genetic survival. Here's what's really happening in these evolutionary laboratories. The combination of constant warmth, abundant moisture, and fierce competition creates conditions where natural selection operates at maximum intensity. Every available niche gets filled, every possible strategy gets tested, and evolution discovers solutions so creative they seem like science fiction. The universe has a surprise for us in these rainforests. The pace of evolutionary innovation here is so rapid that scientists discover an average of 3 new species every week. This means that in the time it takes you to read this chapter, somewhere in a tropical forest, researchers will identify plants or animals that have never been described by science. The total number of species in tropical forests may reach 10 million or more, meaning we share our planet with countless creatures we've never encountered. The numbers tell an incredible story of evolutionary creativity. In a single tree in Peru, entomologists found over 1,500 species of beetles, the more beetle diversity in one tree than exists in all of Europe. A half-acre plot in Panama contains more tree species than the entire continental United States. These biodiversity hotspots represent evolution's greatest experiments in packing as many different forms of life as possible into limited space. But biodiversity alone doesn't capture the true marvel of tropical forest evolution. Here, organisms develop such specific adaptations to narrow niches that many species exist nowhere else on Earth. Some plants grow only on specific types of rocks, in specific soil conditions, at specific elevations, creating evolutionary specialists so finely tuned to their environments that changing any single factor can drive them extinct. The evolutionary arms race between plants and their predators reaches extraordinary extremes in these forests. Trees develop chemical defenses so sophisticated they seem almost intelligent. Some plants produce different toxins in different parts of their leaves, creating chemical maps that guide herbivores away from the most vulnerable growing tips. Others synchronize their chemical defenses across entire populations, creating forest-wide strategies that overwhelm the detoxification abilities of insects trying to eat them. The speed of evolutionary response in tropical forests astounds researchers. When new diseases or pests arrive, plant populations can develop resistance within decades rather than the centuries or millennia, typical in temperate regions. This rapid evolution occurs because tropical forests support such large populations of plants and animals that mutations conferring survival advantages appear frequently and spread quickly through populations. Here's where evolutionary time becomes truly mind-bending. While some rainforest species evolve rapidly in response to immediate challenges, others represent living fossils that have remained virtually unchanged for millions of years. Cycads, palm-like plants found in tropical forests, have retained the same basic body plan for over 200 million years. These ancient survivors share the forest with cutting-edge evolutionary experiments, creating ecosystems where deep time and rapid change coexist in the same landscape. The evolutionary strategies developed in tropical forests often involve relationships of staggering complexity. Fig trees and their pollinating wasps have been evolving together for over 60 million years, developing partnerships so specific that each species of fig depends on exactly one species of wasp, and vice versa. These co-evolutionary relationships create intricate webs of interdependence, where the extinction of any single species can trigger cascading effects throughout the ecosystem. Some evolutionary partnerships in rainforests reach levels of integration that blur the boundaries between different species. Leafcutter ants don't actually eat the leaves they harvest instead. They cultivate fungus gardens, feeding the fungi with chewed leaf material and then eating the fungus. These ants have been practicing agriculture for over 50 million years, evolving sophisticated farming techniques that include fertilizing their gardens with specialized waste products and maintaining pure fungal cultures free from contaminating microorganisms. The vertical structure of rainforests creates opportunities for evolutionary specialization impossible in other environments. Some frogs have evolved to live their entire lives in the canopy, never descending to the ground. Their tadpoles develop in water-filled bromeliads, high in the trees, and some species have evolved elaborate parental care behaviors where adults carry their offspring from pool to pool as water sources dry up. Evolution in rainforests also experiments with extreme longevity strategies. Some trees live for over 2,000 years, their lifespans spanning entire epochs of human history. These ancient giants witness countless generations of faster evolving species, serving as stable foundations around which more rapidly changing communities organize themselves. The contrast between organisms that complete entire life cycles in weeks and those that live for millennia creates temporal complexity that adds another dimension to rainforest diversity. But perhaps the most extraordinary aspect of evolution in tropical forests involves the development of mimicry and deception strategies so sophisticated they challenge our understanding of how complex behaviors can evolve. Some orchids perfectly mimic the appearance and scent of female insects, triggering mating behaviors in male insects that result in pollination. The precision of these mimics is so exact that male insects often prefer the orchid flowers to actual females of their own species. Other plants have evolved to mimic the chemical signatures of ant colonies, triggering territorial behaviors that result in ants defending the plants from herbivores. Some climbing vines mimic the leaf shapes and patterns of their host trees so precisely that they become virtually invisible, avoiding detection by predators that might cut the vine to reach the host's resources. The evolution of seed dispersal strategies in rainforests showcases nature's creativity in solving transportation challenges. Some trees produce fruits so large and heavy that only the strongest mammals can carry them, ensuring wide dispersal. Others create seeds with elaborate hooks and barbs that attach to specific types of fur or feathers. Some plants have evolved explosive seed pods that can launch seeds over 100 feet from the parent tree. Carnivorous plants represent some of evolution's most dramatic experiments in alternative nutrition strategies. In nutrient-poor rainforest soils, some plants have evolved to supplement their nutrition by capturing and digesting insects, spiders, and even small vertebrates. Pitcher plants create elaborate traps filled with digestive enzymes, while sundews produce sticky substances that immobilize prey. These adaptations allow plants to thrive in conditions where traditional root-based nutrition would be insufficient. The coevolution between rainforest plants and their pollinators has produced some of nature's most spectacular displays. Some flowers bloom only at night, producing intense fragrances that can be detected by moths from over a mile away. Others bloom for just a few hours, requiring precisely timed visits from specific pollinators. The synchronization required for these relationships represents millions of years of evolutionary fine-tuning. But evolution in rainforests doesn't just create specialists, it also produces some of nature's most successful generalists. Some plants can switch between different photosynthesis strategies depending on environmental conditions, allowing them to thrive in both deep shade and bright sunlight. Others develop modular growth patterns that let them reshape their entire architecture in response to changing conditions, essentially becoming different plants as their environment changes. The evolutionary timescales operating in rainforests span from minutes to millions of years simultaneously. Chemical defenses can be activated within minutes of an attack, triggering evolutionary responses that play out over decades. Meanwhile, the basic architecture of rainforest ecosystems has remained stable for millions of years, providing the evolutionary stage on which countless species have risen and fallen. At the opposite extreme from these evolutionary speed demons, we find trees that epitomize the slow and steady approach to survival. The bristlecone pines of California's mountains grow so slowly they add less than a millimeter of diameter each year. But this patient strategy allows them to live for over 4,000 years. These ancient trees began growing before the pyramids were built and have witnessed the entire span of recorded human history while barely changing their appearance. Here's what's truly remarkable about these ancient survivors. They carry within their wood detailed records of environmental conditions spanning millennia. Each ring represents not just a year of growth, but a historical document recording temperature, rainfall, atmospheric composition, and even volcanic eruptions that occurred during that year. Scientists studying these tree rings have reconstructed climate conditions going back over 8,000 years, revealing patterns of environmental change that occurred long before human record-keeping began. The contrast between the frenetic pace of tropical evolution and the patient endurance of ancient trees reveals evolution's flexibility in solving the challenges of survival. In environments where resources are abundant but competition is fierce, evolution favors rapid innovation and specialization. In harsh environments where resources are scarce but competition is limited, evolution favors durability and efficiency over speed. Some rainforest trees demonstrate evolution's ability to combine both strategies within a single organism. These trees can live for centuries, providing stability to forest communities, while simultaneously supporting incredibly diverse communities of epiphytes, parasites, and symbionts that evolve rapidly in response to changing conditions. A single ancient tree becomes an evolutionary laboratory where hundreds of species experiment with new adaptations over decades and centuries. The evolutionary history preserved in rainforests includes countless examples of convergent evolution, where unrelated species independently develop similar solutions to survival challenges. Strangler figs in different continents have evolved nearly identical strategies for reaching sunlight, by growing up the trunks of host trees, eventually encasing and killing their hosts while using their structure for support. These parallel evolutionary solutions demonstrate that certain strategies represent optimal responses to specific environmental challenges. The chemical warfare between plants and herbivores in rainforests has driven the evolution of some of nature's most potent toxins. Many rainforest plants produce compounds so powerful they serve as the basis for human medicines and poisons. Curare, used by indigenous peoples to poison arrows, comes from rainforest vines. Quinine, crucial for treating malaria, derives from the bark of cinchona trees. These chemical defenses represent millions of years of evolutionary research and development in biological warfare. Evolution in rainforests also experiments with extreme-size strategies. Some trees grow over 6 feet per year in their race towards sunlight, channeling virtually all their energy into rapid vertical growth. Others, like the massive cecropia trees, can grow from seed to full canopy height in just 5 years, then live fast and die young, completing their entire life cycle before slower-growing competitors can shade them out. The pollination strategies that have evolved in rainforests include some of nature's most elaborate deceptions and partnerships. Some orchids have evolved flowers that smell like rotting meat to attract carrion flies, while others produce fragrances that mimic the pheromones of specific insects. The precision required for these chemical mimics represents evolutionary engineering of incredible sophistication. Seed dispersal evolution in rainforests has produced strategies that span the spectrum from brute force to elegant precision. Some trees produce fruits so nutritious that animals will travel miles to reach them, ensuring wide dispersal of seeds. Others have evolved seeds with aerodynamic properties that allow them to glide for hundreds of yards through the forest canopy, reaching distant growing sites without relying on animal dispersers. The future of evolution in rainforests faces unprecedented challenges as human activities fragment habitats and alter environmental conditions faster than many species can adapt. Climate change is shifting the environmental conditions that have shaped rainforest evolution for millions of years, potentially driving many specialized species extinct while creating opportunities for more adaptable generalists. Yet evolution continues its relentless experimentation, even in the face of these challenges. Scientists are documenting rapid evolutionary responses to human-caused environmental changes, from trees developing resistance to air pollution to animals adapting their behavior to avoid human-dominated landscapes. Evolution's creativity in finding solutions to new challenges continues to surprise researchers studying these dynamic systems. The story of evolution in Earth's forests reveals life's incredible capacity for innovation and adaptation across all timescales. From the split-second chemical responses that protect plants from attack to the millennial patience of ancient trees, evolution has explored every possible strategy for survival and reproduction. In rainforests where species are discovered weekly, and in ancient groves where trees remember the climate of previous millennia, we witness evolution's ongoing experiment in creating and sustaining life's complexity. This evolutionary creativity becomes even more remarkable when we consider the challenges facing forests in our current era. As human activities accelerate the pace of environmental change, the evolutionary innovations perfected over millions of years face their greatest test, setting the stage for the most critical chapter in the forest's long story. Every 2 seconds, humanity destroys forest area equivalent to a football field. This relentless pace of deforestation has triggered the most desperate race in human history, a battle between destruction and discovery that will determine whether future generations inherit a planet capable of supporting complex life. The stakes could not be higher. Forests store more carbon than the entire atmosphere, regulate weather patterns across continents, and provide the foundation for ecosystems that support the majority of Earth's terrestrial species. Here's what's really happening as we lose these forests. We're dismantling Earth's life support systems faster than we can understand how they work. Scientists estimate that tropical forests alone contain between 5 and 10 million species, most still unknown to science. When a forest disappears, it takes with it not just the trees we can see, but entire communities of organisms that may hold solutions to humanity's greatest challenges, from climate change to disease. The universe has a surprise for us in this crisis. Even as destruction accelerates, our understanding of forest value grows exponentially. Advanced satellite monitoring now allows scientists to track deforestation in real time, while DNA analysis techniques enable researchers to identify new species from water samples, dramatically accelerating the pace of discovery. We're gaining the tools to understand what we're losing just as we're losing it at unprecedented rates. In remote research stations scattered across Earth's remaining wild forests, scientists work against time to document ecosystems that may vanish before we fully understand them. In the Amazon, researchers have established canopy research platforms that allow them to study forest dynamics 24 hours a day. These stations, some accessible only by helicopter or days of jungle trekking, represent humanity's frontline effort to understand forest complexity before it's too late. The race to document biodiversity before it disappears has revolutionized biological research. Scientists now use environmental DNA techniques that can identify hundreds of species from a single water sample, revealing the presence of organisms that might take years to find through traditional methods. Automated recording devices capture the sounds of forest communities, allowing researchers to monitor biodiversity by analyzing the acoustic signatures of different species. But documentation alone cannot save forests. On the ground, a different kind of battle unfolds daily as local communities, conservation organizations, and government agencies struggle to protect remaining forests from illegal logging, mining, and agricultural conversion. Anti-poaching rangers in Central Africa track armed gangs through forests where a single tree can be worth $50,000 on illegal markets. These rangers risk their lives to protect trees that represent not just economic value, but entire ecosystems that have taken centuries to develop. Indigenous communities across the world have emerged as forests' most effective protectors. In the Amazon, indigenous territories contain some of the last intact forest ecosystems on Earth. These communities use satellite phones and GPS technology to alert the world when invaders threaten their ancestral territories, creating early warning systems that help coordinate rapid response efforts. Their traditional knowledge, accumulated over thousands of years, provides insights into forest management that Western science is still only beginning to understand. The economics of forest conservation reveal both the challenge and the opportunity in protecting these ecosystems. A standing forest provides ecosystem services, carbon storage, water purification, climate regulation, and biodiversity conservation worth far more than the timber, agricultural land, or mineral resources that drive deforestation. But these ecosystem services generate value over decades and centuries, while forest destruction provides immediate economic benefits to those who clear the land. Here's where the story takes a hopeful turn. Innovative financing mechanisms are beginning to make forest conservation economically competitive with forest destruction. Carbon credit programs pay forest owners for keeping their trees standing, recognizing that intact forests store carbon that would otherwise contribute to climate change. Payment for ecosystem services programs compensate communities for protecting forests that provide clean water to downstream cities. The technology revolution has transformed forest monitoring and protection efforts. Satellites can now detect illegal logging operations within hours of trees being cut, allowing authorities to respond before significant damage occurs. Drones, equipped with advanced sensors, patrol remote forest areas, providing real-time intelligence about threats to protected areas. Artificial intelligence analyzes vast quantities of satellite data to predict where deforestation is most likely to occur, enabling preventive conservation efforts. But perhaps the most powerful tool in forest conservation is growing global awareness of forest importance. Social media campaigns can mobilize millions of people to protest forest destruction within hours. Consumer pressure has forced major corporations to eliminate products linked to deforestation from their supply chains. International agreements increasingly recognize forest protection as essential for addressing climate change and preserving biodiversity. The restoration of degraded forests represents another front in the battle for Earth's lungs. Scientists have developed sophisticated techniques for accelerating forest recovery, from selecting optimal combinations of native species to using drones to plant seeds in remote areas. Some restoration projects have successfully regenerated forests that support diverse wildlife communities within decades rather than the centuries natural succession would require. Forest restoration efforts often involve partnerships between science and traditional knowledge that produce results neither approach could achieve alone. Indigenous communities provide insights into which species grow best in specific conditions and how to manage forests sustainably over long periods. Scientists contribute techniques for accelerating growth, monitoring ecosystem health, and predicting how restored forests will respond to changing environmental conditions. The urban forestry movement has discovered that cities can support surprisingly diverse forest communities when designed thoughtfully. Green roofs, vertical gardens, and urban forests not only provide ecosystem services to city dwellers, but also serve as stepping stones that help forest species move through landscapes increasingly dominated by human development. Some urban forests now support species that have been eliminated from surrounding rural areas due to agricultural intensification. Climate change adds urgency to forest conservation efforts by threatening even protected forests with unprecedented environmental conditions. Rising temperatures, altered rainfall patterns, and increased frequency of extreme weather events challenge forests' ability to survive in regions where they've thrived for thousands of years. Conservation biologists are developing strategies to help forests adapt to changing conditions, including assisted migration programs that help species move to more suitable habitats. The pharmaceutical potential of forests provides another compelling argument for their conservation. Over 25% of modern medicines derive from forest plants, yet scientists estimate that less than 1% of forest species have been thoroughly analyzed for their medicinal properties. The loss of species before they're discovered and studied means we may be losing potential treatments for cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and other conditions that plague humanity. The water cycle services provided by forests affect billions of people worldwide. Forests act as natural water treatment plants, filtering pollutants from rainwater and releasing clean water into streams and groundwater systems. They also regulate water flow, reducing flood risk during heavy rains and maintaining stream flow during dry periods. The destruction of watersheds forests can affect water security for entire regions. Carbon storage in forests represents one of our most powerful tools for addressing climate change. Mature forests can store hundreds of tons of carbon per acre, most of it locked in wood that can persist for centuries if the forest remains intact. Protecting existing forests provides immediate climate benefits, while forest restoration can remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere for decades as new trees grow. The biodiversity crisis in forests extends beyond individual species to include the loss of ecological relationships that have evolved over millions of years. When forests are fragmented, even species that survive may lose their ecological functions if their partners, pollinators, seed dispersers, or symbiotic organisms disappear. Maintaining forest connectivity through corridors and large protected areas becomes essential for preserving these ecological relationships. International cooperation has become crucial for forest conservation, as many remaining large forests cross national boundaries. Transboundary conservation